Did you ever mum cool enough to let you play Resident Evil as a kid? I did, thanks mum. If your maternal figure, like mine, was also pretty dismissive of video game age ratings, then you and I likely share some mutual memories. Mildly traumatising, but oddly comforting memories of being lurched after by rotting corpses or being hunted by hurtling window-smashing hounds equally as decayed as the zombies, all while feeling massively out of your depth in a sprawling abandoned mansion. There's something special about the original Resident Evil, all the way back from 1996, and I know it's not just nostalgia talking, although it may help to dull the frustration of some admittedly dated systems. So get your caffeinated beverage of choice, crank your DualShock Edition soundtrack to 11, and allow me to present to you my coffee-fueled retrospective of OG Resident Evil.
Resident Evil.
Oh, Resident Evil. What can honestly be said that hasn't been said 1,000 times? The history leading up to the release of this horror pioneer is well cited, and I won't bore you by regurgitating readily available information once more. In a nutshell, OG Resident Evil is a third-person survival horror game with somewhat infamous tank controls, a restrictive small inventory and deadly monsters. This video covers the director's cut played on standard difficulty, but not the DualShock Edition, because that shit can honestly burn in hell. Bloody clown party music in my basement, get out. The director's cut includes all of the difficulty modes but with the original non-shit music. Standard difficulty is the intended experience, with training mode being much easier, with double ammo and vastly weakened enemies. Advanced mode swings the other way, providing the player with less ammunition and healing, and makes the enemies hit like me when I play Euro Truck Simulator, doing 87 mph in a school zone. One zombie bite will kill Jill if you get unlucky, and also rearranges many of the item and enemy locations so it's almost like a new game. It even changes the camera angles to throw you off even more. It's a great addition and worth playing once you clear standard. Quick pro tip if you're really struggling: when you're starting a new advanced game, if you highlight the advanced difficulty option, press right twice, holding it in on the second press just for a few seconds and it will turn green. Congrats, you now have double ammo on every pickup. Still pretty tough though, so good luck. The story premise is simple, but it works. In the fictional city of Raccoon City, a series of rather unpleasant cannibalistic murders have recently started cropping up and have been traced back to the outskirts of the city, specifically in the Arklay Mountain region. The elite branch of the Raccoon City Police Department, known as STARS, Special Tactics and Rescue Service, are sent to investigate. The STARS Bravo team will never return from their mission, and the Alpha team is sent to find that missing team. However, the maintenance bloke for STARS obviously needs to sack because the helicopter that the Alpha team is riding in fails mid-air and crash lands into the mountainous woods. To cut a long story short, they do find Bravo team's helicopter, and it's obvious some dodgy foul play is going on. They stumble across some unspecified dead guy and are surprised attacked by some deadly demon dogs with drooly mouths. 3 members of the Alpha team, fleeing for their lives, manage to find their way to a super spooky mansion and dive inside for cover, and this is where the game starts proper. Pinned inside the house by oppressive Barky Boys. The game gives you the choice of 2 characters. You've got boulder bashing competitor Chris Redfield, or sandwich wannabe Jill Valentine. Chris is decidedly the harder character, with just 6 slots in his inventory as opposed to Jill's 8. Each item in the game takes up a single slot regardless of size. That means a lumbering rocket launcher takes the same amount of space as a questionable herbal healing item. Just roll with it. Okay, things change in Resident Evil 2. Jill is a fair bit weaker though, with less total HP, but she has certain story elements that make her side of the story an easier time. The camera's perspective is fixed and the environments in the game are pre-rendered. This essentially means that they're just images in the background, but modelled and rendered so well that they give a real feel of 3-dimensional space. The reasoning behind this choice is that the PS1 honestly wasn't as powerful as we remember it being. It just couldn't render all these environments in full 3D, and definitely not with this level of detail. As massive as the single megabyte of video memory was, it wasn't quite massive enough. However, this did leave a relatively large amount of system power to the player models, enemy models, and interactable items in the environment. A very efficient visual method, and one I think should be brought back to survival horror purely based on its fit to the genre, even if for an experimental title. RE8 developers, are you listening? As the angles of perspective are fixed, it gives the developers entire control over what the player can and cannot see, a very useful tool for a horror title, and instilling a fear of the unknown is a large part of a true horror experience. Speaking of spooks, the mention of Resident Evil absolutely holds up in its creep factor. Even though the resolution of backgrounds were designed for blurry CRT TVs of the 90s and are still blocky as hell on a modern display, with a bit of imagination they're good as new. Just squint your eyes a bit guys, it's free anti-aliasing. To be clear, I am running this on an EPSXE emulator with some texture filtering so it doesn't look like Pac-Man on a 1080p display. The emulation does cause some visual artifacting at times, but it's more than worth it. You might notice some of the character models twitching about or the text in-game jittering randomly. The shaking on the text actually fits surprisingly well, I kinda like it. Anyway, at this point in the Resident Evil timeline, you don't know the mansion is called the Spencer Mansion, but it is, and I'll be referring to it as such from now on. The mansion design and aesthetic is just the right amount of wrong. Walking tentatively around its halls, you might notice a slight barrenness or a sterile lack of decor. This uncanny appearance gives an impression of a facade. This isn't a lived-in space, it feels fake. You know, like those fake IKEA living room setups or a house auction, and it just goes against everything you'd expect from a luxurious mansion setting. It's like you're in a Sims game and someone can't be asked to decorate it. That's not me, by the way, I value my comfort meter, thank you very much. Actually moving Jill and Chris around the environment is a point of contention amongst players. Some, like me, find the tank controls intuitive and appropriate due to the fixed angles, but others just can't work with them. Fortunately for those people, later titles include other control methods, but personally just give me that classic tank action. The tank controls might sound a bit silly in name, but it makes sense when you try them out for more than 10 seconds. The left and right buttons rotate your character on the spot, and the forward and backwards buttons move your character in respect to the way they're oriented. So movement is done relative to your character and not the camera. If movement was relative to the camera, then each time the angle changed, the same button you've been pressing would take you a completely different direction. And when you're legging it from a spooky undead beastie, that's not particularly handy, believe me. If you have ears, the chances are you've already been treated to the voice acting talent on display here.
Whoa!
Apparently, during development, Capcom grabbed the first English-speaking people they could find to read some lines for the game. Jill's voice actor was allegedly still in high school. This naturally leads to some high-quality acting and great chemistry between true professionals.
Joseph!
A master of unlocking indeed. In reality, the quote-unquote bad quality is infinitely infamous, but come on, it has its charm. I think it adds to the uncanny feeling of the entire circumstance. Let me just find some choice highlights for you.
Don't open that door! What is this?
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
This hall is dangerous. There must be a back door somewhere.
If the good guys are this out of it, what does that say for everything else? The game itself is split into 5 distinctive parts. You've got the main mansion, the guardhouse, the return to the mansion, the tunnels, and the lab. Let's look at each part separately in both setting, story, and gameplay. After seeking refuge from the chumpy carnivorous canines, 3 staff members are thrust into the grandiose main hall, the beginning of the first chapter. Just a quick thought here, don't huge mansions usually have some sort of an estate? Don't they usually have a huge gated front garden area? Maybe their helicopter crashed inside of the estate and the dogs were the previous hounds the groundskeeper would set on intruders. That always bothered me slightly, but hey, it's a PS1 game, I can kinda look past it. The entrance hall is fancy as hell and like 90% marble. Voices and footsteps echo repeatedly and a bold red carpet leads up the stairs to the next floor. The hall does a great job of teasing the scale of the place. On the first shot alone there are 4 doors, not including the one you came in from, and that's just on one wall. Depending on who you choose to play as, 3 different STARS members will make it into the mansion. If you chose Jill, you'll have Jill, Barry and Captain Wesker, or if you chose Chris, you'll have Chris, Jill and Wesker. While I played through both characters for this video, I will be leaning more on the side of Jill's narrative, as I believe it is a little bit more interesting and Barry is just a downright lad. Either way, your team soon hears another gunshot in the distance and you decide the only logical thing to do in this situation is to split up entirely. Jill and Barry dawdle off and stumble across the dining room, which has a overly large wooden table that suggests the owner might be trying to compensate for something. You can also double back to the main hall here and have a small extra scene.
Investigate if you hear any gunfire.
So, Barry finds some ketchup, Jill finds Eminem with a dandruff problem. This reveal used to be the freakiest shit to me when I was a wee young lad many years ago. While in 2020 it looks like a polystyrene mannequin someone found in a ditch in Basildon, at the time it was a gaunt, spooky zombie threat and I always noped the fuck out of there. The only way I could play this game as a kid is with my older sister, and even then we needed a walkthrough. Such noobs. Emulation does do a lot to help here though. With filtered and upscaled 3D models, you can actually see a lot more gory details in the zombie models, and I'm certain you couldn't make out these details in the standard PS1 resolution. Just for reference, that 640 by 480 resolution would look a little something like this. Jill can either gun this zombie down or leg it back to the dining room and let Barry do her dirty work and save those precious bullets.
Barry?
What is it?
Watch out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of this.
If it's your first time playing the game, you might not realise it, but that pistol Barry's got, it's a Colt Python, and it's the strongest weapon in the game and easily obliterates most enemies in a single shot. And Barry is the star's weapon expert, just, doing the bunny fingers here, and he sucks arse at shooting. After that palaver's over, you head back to the main hall to report to your captain.
Wesker!
Naturally, he's buggered off, and you do some extremely thorough searching of this single room. Barry crowns you the Master of Unlocking.
Master of Unlocking.
And you go off to find Barry's back door.
There must be a back door somewhere.
Fun fact, the easy mode lockpick that Barry just gave you is a replacement for several items that Chris has to find manually, and it doesn't even take up an inventory slot. Talk about favoritism. The mansion layout is actually very smart, with 2 main wings and the entrance hall in the centre forming an almost symmetrical design. Roughly in the centre of each wing is a save room with a typewriter to save your game with. The save system in OG RE is intentionally restrictive, requiring ink ribbons which are found throughout the game to save your progress. You can only use these ink ribbons at typewriters found in specific locations, almost always paired with an item box. The item box is the perfect place to store your scavenged goodies, and luckily for our undead dodging protagonists, all of the boxes in this game are linked. This means the strange shield emblem you picked up in that dining room will appear in every box in the game, regardless of which one you placed it in. This applies to all the items in the game and is a total godsend. Imagine if there was some mode that disabled item box linking and forced you to ferry each and every item in the game over and over and over.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Mechanically speaking, the enemies you meet in this first portion don't pose much of a threat, providing you keep your distance and keep plugging away with the pistol. The zombies themselves are pretty terrifying at first, with their 90s quality groans and moans, shambling awkwardly towards you with equally 90s pathfinding. These guys typically go down with between 5 and 10 shots of the pistol, and you might even blow an arm off, which is a really cool visual detail for the 90s. The zombie blokes will stay down only when a large pool of blood emanates from the corpse. If not, shoot them again, put them down for good. Leaving an area and entering again will reset the locations of all the enemies, but also resets their health, so bear that in mind if you didn't finish them off the first time. I'd actually forgotten this until I made this video, but the enemy arrangements and their numbers are even more dangerous for Chris. Extra enemies are added in random places just to be evil. Slow and shambling as they are, some of the moans and shuffling sounds in these guys are really stellar, especially for back in the day. Have a listen to this and tell me it's not creepy. Good job, zombie actors. The combat is a simple affair, requiring the holding of the R1 button to aim at the nearest enemy and X to fire. Jill and Chris can rotate on the spot, tweak their aim as well as aiming up and down, useful for taking pot shots at downed zombies. Importantly, you can't move and aim at the same time, a deliberate restriction I'm certain, as it ensures that engaging in combat is a commitment, and if you're not brave or clever enough to see it through, you'll suffer damage and maybe even death. Sometimes it's better to run, and thanks to the stationary aiming system you can't do both. Not good for the indecisive gamer. With skillful timing, you can of course work somewhere in the middle by kiting the enemies and taking a few well-timed shots here and there, provided you don't get backed into a corner, but this has more use on the faster and tougher foes later in the game. The main challenge of survival isn't inherently in the combat, but managing the resources required to fight when needed and making sure you've got the heals to patch up any cock-ups you made in the process. You've got your standard ammunition scattered around the place, usually 9mm bullets for the pistol, and the occasional box of shotgun shells and healing herbs, but more on those later. As hostile as these mechanics can be, the Spencer Mansion does feel welcoming and comfortable to me, likely out of pure nostalgia for times when we were not weighed down by omnipresent adulthood. Contrary to what I said earlier perhaps, but it's the same feeling you get when you put on an old hoodie or you sit in your favourite chair that's become perfectly moulded to the shape of your butt over time. Sometimes I wish I could wipe all memory of this game and see what it's like to play it for the first time again. So I know that if it's the inherent design of the mansion that brings out this feeling of comfort or just my deep familiarity with it. I've always appreciated the aesthetic of the wooden flooring that's common in the Spencer Mansion. There's something about the bassy clunk of footsteps made when walking, or in this case, running across them. There's one second floor hallway that always used to creep me out as a kid because it seems to have more of a bassy thud, the more sinister quality than the others. So, we need to get out of this mansion, not by the front door, but by another means. If you take the route advised through the big blue doors on the east side of the main hall, you'll eventually find an outside path leading to a chunky mill door. Next to said door, there is a panel requiring 4 crests, and now you've got your objective. Get your 4 crests, get out. Of course, you have no idea where they are, and nearly all of them are behind locked doors that themselves require other keys to open. Your first order of business is to find the armor key, which is hidden behind this wacky, waveable, inflatable, arm-flailing tube plant that will whip you in the face should you try to pass. Hopefully, you picked up this bag of chemicals from the East Side save room, chuck them in this pump thing and watch Groot die. Go ahead and grab your key and as many herbs as you can carry. I haven't even mentioned the different types of herbs yet. There are 3 different types of herbs. You've got green, red and blue. Green heals you for roughly 30% of your health. Blue heals poison, and red does nothing by itself, but when mixed with green, it amplifies its healing power to 100%. Yep, herbs are mixable, which is handy for saving space. Up to 3 green herbs can be mixed together for a complete heal, and you can also make a green-blue-red combo which fully heals you and cures poison. Handy. There aren't many points you can actually get poison throughout the game, but it is a good idea to have a blue in storage just in case. You've also got your iconic first aid sprays, which completely heal you but cannot be made by items. Just make a green and red combo instead, and they also don't cure poison. How the STARS members apply the healing properties of these herbs I simply don't know. Do they eat them? Do they bake them into brownies first? Do they roll them up in branded STARS cigarettes paper and Snoop Dogg their way back to health? I choose to remain ignorant and just accept they make my health bar all nice and green again. Your HP isn't even the classical 0 to 100 in this game. Oh no, that would be far too helpful. You've got 3 vague stages of health. You've got fine, caution, danger, and then you're dead, likely pelting your controller into orbit because you haven't saved in 3 hours. Good job. This armor key opens up a whole lot of doors for you to explore. More goodies to hoard, but more spooky zombies blocking your way. Some of these doors are optional, but recommended, especially on advanced mode, due to their stashed supplies that you'll be finding rather scarce during your stay at Hotel Chomp and Groan. The important doors are the ones that lead to this statue puzzle on the east side 2nd floor, and the next door down in the same hallway. The statue puzzle is as simple as you can get. You push the statues over these vents in the floor and push the button in the middle. Take care not to push the button in the centre of the room either with your feet or one of the pushable statues, because you might gas yourself. Once you're done, pat yourself on the back and pick up your first crest. I'd recommend doing a little bit of prep work before entering this next door. Remember that wooden crest from back in the dining room? We need to use it somewhere. That somewhere being in this swanky bar housing an even swankier grand piano, situated on the west side of the 1st floor, just off the first zombie hallway. Cozy. You'll find some sheet music in here, and luckily for us, Jill is a descendant of Mozart and can play any piano piece flawlessly. This is another way that Jill has it easy when compared to Chris. Instead of having Barry as a companion, Chris has the unbelievably inept sidekick Rebecca Chambers, a medic for the STARS Bravo team.
What? Oh no!
Her only redeeming quality is that she can sort of play the piano. Upon finding the music as Chris, not only does he fail tragically in trying to play it, but he has to allow Rebecca to try, fail pretty badly, and then practice until she gets it right.
Wait, what is that?
The trigger for Rebecca learning the piece isn't even based on time, but distance. You can just run back to the main hall and then back to the bar and she would have learned the piece in record time. It's a mild inconvenience at worst, I suppose, and hearing Rebecca play the music out of key from a few rooms away from the bar does make some appropriate atmospheric music. The reward for musical excellence is opening the secret compartment on the largest wall of the bar, which, although hard to tell, is actually the back of the fountain room housing the first key you acquired. Got a window and everything. Swap the wooden crest with the golden one you see here and pop the golden one back in the dining room, and then you can grab your key from the clock. Grabbing the lighter is optional but handy for a room that's en route too. You can grab that here. The guy you find through the other armor key door is Richard Aiken. He's the communications expert for the STARS Bravo team and he's not looking so good. What happened to you, Richard?
It was a huge snake and also poisonous. Ugh.
Poisonous?
Luckily for the STARS team, Richard is not the medic, or you would know that the snake is in fact venomous and not poisonous. Be speedy and grab some medicine for him from the west side save room. If you're too slow, Richard can die before you get back there, but there's no huge difference in story if you take the scenic route. There's just a small amount of missed dialogue because he dies anyway after giving you his radio. You can even loot his poor corpse for more pistol bullets. Through this next door, swing a left if you've got that lighter and use one of the candles for some bonus goodies. Or just go straight up through the spooky door to the attic. A little bit of environmental detail by the stairs here that shows how Richard left that room not so long ago, smearing blood everywhere. You do know someone has to clean that up, right Richard? It also tells us that there is a 99.999% chance that this huge venomous snake is right behind this door. And sure enough, there it is, guarding shiny crest number 2. This beastie is officially named Yawn, even though I don't think it's ever mentioned in any in-game information. I've never managed to figure this fight out though. You don't actually have to fire a single shot here. Your only goal is to grab the crest and leg it, but if you get bitten once by the snake you are immediately poisoned. Sometimes I pull it off, other times Yawn is American Sniper on steroids. Poison gradually decays your health over time until you can whack a blue herb on it, although Yawn's poison is special and can only be cleared by the same serum you gave Richard earlier. Either way, it shouldn't be too difficult to escape from the room, and if you're playing as Jill, a mysterious figure saves you after you leave the room and collapse from the poison.
Whoa!
This event doesn't always occur, and you'll sometimes have to run back to the west side save room to grab some serum for yourself. To this day, I don't know what causes certain events to trigger or not to trigger. For example, during my run of the game for this video, I didn't even get the famous Jill sandwich scene. I had to go into this room here, practice for the Speed Reloading Championship for 2020, grab this gunky broken shotgun and solve the puzzle properly. For those of you unfamiliar, there is a shotgun here that you can grab from the start of the game, but it triggers the ceiling in the square room before to come down and crush you. You need to replace the working shotgun with the broken shotgun and it stops the trap mechanism from triggering. How does this broken shotgun even get this broken? What the hell did they do to it? Look at it! Why are they keeping it? You have zero chance of repairing this mess. Just bin it, mate. If you're playing as Chris, you have to do this full puzzle regardless, but Jill can skip it entirely through the power of Barry and sandwiches. Either way, you now have a shotgun. Go and blow some heads off. As you can see, aiming straight up with a shotgun at a close range is almost guaranteed to one-shot any zombie. It's pretty awesome. The next crest is found in the art gallery behind another puzzle. Just push the buttons under the paintings in order of the stages of life, and then you get some funky music as your crest is revealed to you. The final crest requires a little bit of property damage, but I think you'll be fine. Go downstairs, grab the gem, pop it in here, and voila, time to escape. Oh, I forgot to mention, Jill gets a grenade launcher right off the bat if you know where to look. It comes with 6 explosive rounds packed in, which amounts to 6 free kills. Did Capcom have something against Chris? At the risk of this video turning into a half-arsed walkthrough, I won't be going over every minute step of every single area, don't worry. But during the first stage of the game, it demonstrates a key design philosophy of the Resident Evil games in general. The game gives you a large, non-linear area to explore while giving you a firm but segmented objective to complete in whatever order you choose. But at the same time, it locks large portions of the Spencer Mansion off via key items to stop the player getting overwhelmed and lost. There is an in-game map to help new players stay on course, and you can even find complete maps while exploring that will plot out entire floors for you. I must say that after playing the Resident Evil 2 remake though, as a first timer to this game, I'd find it a little hard to go back to the old map system without the helpful item and room indicators. Fortunately for me, I know where every item in the game is from years of replaying. Humble brag. While paling in comparison to a lot of open-ended games these days, there's a small amount of variance in how a player experiences the first stage of the mansion. This allows for individual experiences to be formed. The occurrences of different cutscenes also helps in this regard. With some only appearing on the higher difficulty level, and with 2 characters to choose from, this game offers a high amount of replay value, especially for a 96 game. OGRE naturally lends itself to the speedrunning community too. These guys have so many varied options to craft their routes and find the most efficient way through the game, while taking advantage of the consistent enemy placement and mechanics. All that being said, the next area, the Guardhouse, doesn't give you a clear objective throughout the whole section. You're just making your way through this area with no real idea of what to do or where to go. Eventually you stumble upon another key, allowing you to return to the mansion and get into those last locked rooms. What the Guardhouse lacks in story direction, however, it makes up for in environment and atmosphere. You can almost smell the damp in this giant wooden shed. This place seems to be a set of dormitories for the servants of the mansion. It does show some signs of inhabitation, though a thick layer of dust now blankets throughout. But hey, at least it's got a bar. Ignore the giant spiders, they're just the regulars. The dorms are eerily quiet apart from the now undead populace and a super unsettling music track. All of the music tracks in this location are brilliant actually. They're full of dissonance and foreign sounding melodies. You'll see what I mean when we get down to the basement level. After exploring a few bedrooms and outrunning giant wasps, you'll find your way down there and begin solving a very simple box pushing puzzle. The puzzle is a little drawn out, sure, but it gives you nothing else to do but to listen to this. It's an excellent atmosphere building moment. I would always try and clear this puzzle as quick as I could when I was younger, and get out before the music got really creepy. Atmosphere aside, there isn't too much to say about this area. It's more of the same gameplay with a refreshing change of scenery. There are a few new enemies to discover, of course. You've got your aforementioned killer wasps the size of grapefruits, and you've got Neptune and his pals. Before you get your hopes up, no, I'm not talking about suave zombie pirates, but zombie sharks instead. Come to think of it, they're not even zombified. They're just regular sharks that happen to be in a mostly zombified community. I'm sure they fit right in and get invited over to the itchy tasty guy's house for tea every other weekend. Spiffing! Neptune and his pals make a comparatively short appearance in contrast to a much bigger and greener threat. Is it a giant green herb? Is it the world's largest cabbage? No! It's Plant 42 and it wants to fucking kill you! This giant lettuce is a massive pain in the veggie garden. Half puzzle boss, half concrete concussion simulator. It's another one of those points in the game where I just don't know what events lead to certain cutscenes. Back in the giant bee room, there is this locked door behind a simple lights out style puzzle. Inside, you can follow basic addition to synthesize a chemical known as V-Jolt. Applying this to the huge roots in the basement will aid your efforts in the plant fight. If you choose to neglect this puzzle and try to take the plant down with brute force, it ends up having 2 lives and therefore consumes double your ammo. Unless, of course, you play as Jill. As far as I can tell, if you forget about the V-Jolt puzzle entirely and just unload flame grenades into Salad Fingers Sr., Jill skips the second part of the fight completely anyway. Instead, Barry storms in with a flamethrower to save your sorry snared self from the superior strangling spinach. When playing as Chris, however, he's too simple in the head to perform basic arithmetic and struggles to count beyond 3, rendering his V-Jolt efforts fruitless. So of course Rebecca has to do it for him during his time of tentacle entanglement, and for her there isn't a flamethrower in sight. By this same logic, Chris shouldn't be able to count the rounds in his guns or the quantity of ammunition left in the shotgun box. What an interesting twist to have a numerically dumb character that can't count supplies. After the dangerous dulse is dried and died and you've gotten to the root of the problem, we have a shiny new unlucky device, the helmet key. Hooray! It's time to return to the mansion, but not before a run-in with a character you've probably forgotten about by now. Shady Sap? The captain. He doesn't really have anything interesting to say, and his only addition to the game right now is providing you with some organic bubble wrap. So satisfying. By now, you're definitely familiar with tackling zombies and the Cerberus dogs, so you're probably feeling pretty confident about your return to the mansion. You've stocked up a decent level of supplies, and you know the mansion pretty well from plenty of backtracking and scavenging runs. I got some bad news for you, kiddo. Say goodbye to your safety stash and your healthy blood pressure, because there's some new boys in town. Don't let that funky 1996 level CGI hand fool you. He's here to fuck up your day. Hunters. Faster than dogs, harder hitting than yawn, and just waiting to one-shot your head off from caution status and below. Some hybrid between reptiles and primates, these screechy beasties replace previous zombie placements almost one for one, with extra ambushes set up in all the wrong places. Hunters are tough, and they will kill you on your first time through without a doubt. Anyone that says otherwise is a lying Brad Vickers, and you deserve what Nemesis gives you in RE3. Your best defense against them is a weapon you don't even have yet. Although the shotgun can work pretty well, providing it's a 1v1 fight, you're better off just trying to run, honestly. Hunters always swipe with their left claw, so if you can stick to their right side, you might get away damage free. Even that stash that Sweetie Pie Barry left us won't do much, but it does help. Thanks, Barry babes. The return to the mansion doesn't just bring new threats and rooms, but new tunes too. These new scores are twisted versions of the original tracks with more dissonance, while remaining familiar enough that you know where they belong. It reinforces the tonal change of navigating around the Spencer mansion, from the previously careful, methodical dispatching of slow, shambling zombies to this frantic fleeing from fast and fierce foes. The monsters, music, and mansion have all stepped up their game, and now you need to follow suit. Good luck. Your first stop should absolutely be the locked study on the west side 2nd floor, as you can find the other eye for the tiger statue downstairs there. If you manage to work your way through the thick hunter presence, you're awarded with Barry's life partner, the Colt Python. This wonderful, sexy steel stallion will kill anything in the game in one hit, including hunters. It might take more shots on advanced difficulty, but honestly I haven't tested it. The balancing factor here is the ammunition for said weapon is very rare. In the entire game, there are 24 more rounds to be found, you only have 6 loaded in the gun already. So that amounts to technically 30 enemies dead, providing you don't miss. Although saving some of this ammo for later bosses in the game is highly advised. I honestly think that's far too generous when you think of it like that. Even more so when you think that Jill gets access to the grenade launcher too. She really is spoiled for choice. Colt Python acquisition is missable, so don't forget it, or you'll regret it. The mandatory objective here is to explore the rest of the rooms and ultimately find a big battery that can be used to circumvent the water pathway between the main mansion and the guardhouse. This opens up the next area of the game, but we aren't quite there yet. We've another serpentine scuffle to surmount. Bring boatloads of ammo to this fight as you can't run away from Yawn this time. Legends say that Yawn can poison you in this fight too, but I've never actually had this happen. Maybe pack a blue herb though, just in case. I really like this room quite a bit, because even though it's deliberately designed to be a large open space to facilitate a boss fight, I can almost imagine there being some kick-ass, super fancy upper class parties here once upon a time. By the way, can anyone confirm if this is how snakes die in reality? After this fight, a handy pathway is opened and you have a subtle choice to make if you're playing as Jill. You can wait for Barry to return with another rope or venture forth under this tombstone. If you don't wait for Barry, it can negatively affect the ending you get and it robs you of a pathway out of the hole in future. It's required for you to head underground to progress, but it's polite to wait for him anyway, isn't it? He also gives you a handy code for this door here on the west wing, but it's not mandatory. By the way, if anyone knows what this writing means on the tombstone, let me know in the comments, will you? With its upscaled and filtered textures, you can make out what it says in this video, but back in '96 no one would have been able to tell. The basement floors of this mansion, while entirely hunter-free, are some of the spookiest in my opinion. That fact does hinge entirely on what version of the game you're playing. In the director's cut, non-DualShock edition, you get this music track as you delve downwards. If you've got the DualShock edition, you know exactly what you're getting into. I'm going to keep it classy and disregard the DualShock edition entirely. Sound design is such an undervalued part of games production, and sometimes it's a more valuable aspect of the production itself than graphics. Value your music composers, guys, they are ultra talented folks. Except this bloke. In the basement area, you'll have your first chance to get an MO disc. There are 3 of these in the lit half of the game, and they're crucial for getting the best ending. Just don't miss this hidden room here in the library. This is the last part of the mansion left to see, and it's one of my favourites, being tucked so far out of the way in this quiet little corner. It could just be due to the hours of build-up to the last secrets this place has to offer before leaving forever. It's like stumbling into a secret lair every time you unlock a new door. As there's a lot of back and forth between the halls and corridors, you grow very familiar with the layout to the point of relative comfort, and when you find something completely new and untouched, it's a true novel feeling. It's like finding a secret door in your own house. The current trend of these massive open worlds often removes this more intimate feeling, and the vast quantities of lands in these games might be beautiful when viewed as a whole, but on a more micro level, there's lots of void-like emptiness. I'd rather a single, mega-detailed square kilometre than thousands of empty fields and roads. Euro Truck Sim gets past though. Big love, Euro Truck. There's one more quick vital stop before you leave, and that's this cosy little study right by the back door. It houses a Doom book, which in itself holds a medal, which you'll need in just a bit. It's time to bid farewell to your favourite haunted house and make your way towards the final areas of the game. How exciting. The battery and crank can be used in combination to uncover the secret tunnel entrance. This relatively short section does feel a tiny bit like padding, and the environments are all very samey, but you do get to roleplay as Indiana Jones for a bit, so that's alright, I suppose. You can find another MO disc behind one of the boulders, and there's a second Doom book hidden down here too. There's really not much else going on. You've got a lot of cranking, a few hunters, some more cranking, and this bloody thing! No indication of any spider-related activity in the entire area, and suddenly, boom, house spider! No, not a spider that lives in your house, but a spider that's the size of a literal stonking house. This 8-limbed arachnid doesn't technically have to be killed, although it goes down pretty fast in around 4 to 5 Colt Python rounds. You can escape without any fighting at all if you slash the webs from the opposite door with your combat knife. Now I'm sure you've been using the knife throughout the entire game, and it's never left your inventory, but there is a spare one in this boss room just in case you somehow forgot. Absolutely absurd to even consider the notion, I know, but it is here. It's much easier to ammo dump this dude to death and then cut the door open in peace. Here's a pro tip though. If you leave and return to the room quickly after the black tiger dies, it will despawn the hundreds of baby spiders spawning from its corpse. You just try cutting those sticky webs off when you're being harassed by those little bastards. With all that said and done, you've got both medals in hand, take the elevator up, and boom, here we are, at the entrance to the final section of the game. It'd be the biggest kick in the balls if you've forgotten to get a Doom book right about now. Especially if it's all the way back in the mansion study. I'm sure none of us would ever forget that. The eagle and wolf medal inside of the Doom books open the path to this lift downwards. Fun fact, see these blue herbs here by the way? Utterly useless. Between this point and the end of the game, there is literally no way for you to be poisoned. But coffee man, I hear you cry. What if I got poisoned in the tunnels, and that would be buggered if I didn't have any blue herbs left? Well, there is some right outside of this last save room, and if you somehow squandered those and you got poisoned again, let's just say you deserve it. I realise I haven't talked about the story much because up to this point, there really hasn't been much exposition in terms of the narrative. The real star of this game is the mansion and its ancillary areas. Truth be told here, the story is actually paper thin and serves primarily as an envelope to wrap up the horror setting and gameplay, and at this point it doesn't really need to be anything more. The general gist of the story is that Captain Wesker, the guy with the sunglasses permanently bolted to his face, turns out to be the bad guy, an authority figure being corrupt and turning on his subordinates. Very original, Capcom, I'm proud of you. His motivation for being a traitorous dick is that he works for the shady umbrella company you've no doubt seen in the documents you found throughout. Somehow, between a full-time, demanding role as a Special Forces captain, he's also a scientist down here in this grimy lab. The hygiene standards in this pit sit somewhere between a third world lavatory and the Resident Evil 7 kitchen. There is no proper lab technique going on here, no wonder a virus broke out. Ah, yes, the virus. The zombies aren't a result of some voodoo magic curse. An asshole virus dubbed the T-virus is the culprit. This is the big daddy all coronaviruses look up to. Let's sincerely hope that joke aged terribly and we're not in a state of lockdown anymore. I'm starting to resemble a Neanderthal. The T-virus is designed to turn various organisms into biological weapons, assumedly to be used for terrorism purposes. How these terrorists plan to control these weapons exactly is an unknown variable. There is a little more to the story than this, but I'll get to that later. Gotta keep some secrets for now. The lab is a 3-floor get-up with the usual Resident Evil formula. Some areas are locked up tight and require cracking open through either a key or breaking into this crisis-capable 90s gaming rig. I hope you're up to the task, Mr. Robot. There's some mention of John and Ada here, expanded upon greatly in the second game. I wonder if at this point the developers knew the story of Resident Evil 2 in advance and placed these details on purpose, or was it in reverse and they extruded the story from this detail into the greater narrative? If anyone does know, leave me a comment about that, would you? I can't imagine there's a huge amount of insider commentary about this specific detail though, but I could be wrong. Dotted around the lab are 3 of these little machines, and the MO discs you hopefully found come into use now. You can use a single MO disc per machine to unlock one lock on this super secret door, and once you've got all 3 unlocked, you can find your missing homie. It'll be Chris locked up if you're playing as Jill, or vice versa. We can't get him out yet though, we'll have to come back later because there's work to do. The main goal of this section is to get this elevator powered on and optionally get those MO discs used up. The power switch, unsurprisingly, is stashed right at the very back of this labyrinthine power building, which also houses a brand new enemy type, the Chimera. Although similar in appearance to hunters, these guys aren't anything super special. They don't do massive damage, and they can usually just be dodged or their attacks tanked. They hang from the ceiling and do this annoying swinging attack, but that's about it. As long as you don't hang around too long, these guys really aren't much of an issue, and I think their limited use in this single section is a little bit of a missed opportunity. Once you get the elevator back on, Barry springs from the shadows and accompanies you to the final floor. This is where Wesker fully reveals his arsehole-ish nature, going so far as to blackmail Barry, holding his family for ransom to force him to help. It turns out the whole idea of getting STARS to come out and investigate this place was just a way to obtain data on how effective these T-virus bioweapons could be. When Jill's rocking a grenade launcher, a Colt Python, a shotgun, and shitload of pistol ammo, it turns out not very effective at all. Barry quickly decides that hearing Wesker prattle on about the ultimate life form is far, far worse a fate than having his family murdered, does a complete 180, pistol whips Wesker into the next continent, and comes back to the good side.
Barry!
The final boss fight is now upon us. I'm sure it'll be grueling.
It can't control what it does.
Oh. Yeah. The final boss fight is a bit of a joke. This could be a reinforcement of Wesker's delusion, thinking this poor excuse for a final boss is the ultimate biological weapon.
Can a creature like this really be the ultimate biological weapon?
I doubt this though, and I think the Tyrant is just undertuned. The difficulty I experienced as a kid on this boss was more likely down to the intimidation factor. The Tyrant is huge, and he looks like a beast. He's imposing, no doubt. But fortunately, now I'm a fully grown adult where the only things to fear are the constant existential dread and running out of coffee. If you just stand your ground and fight him, it turns out he's a delicate little sunflower, and he dies in fewer hits than Jill does. At least on standard. Obviously, advanced difficulty changes a lot, but I'd still have expected more. It is a very old game now, so I have to bear that in mind when comparing it to the balance of modern titles, and it gives it a fair amount of slack. We're all good, Resident Evil. We still love you. The game may not be over yet, anyway. It seems Barry should have twatted Wesker a little harder than he did, because he's buggered off now, and he's triggered the self-destruct system for the entire facility. Depending on if you bothered with the MO discs and saving Chris/Jill, you'll now be able to fetch them as their cell has magically sprung open thanks to the emergency evacuation protocols. If not, then the game is basically over for you. Apart from ruthlessly removing the remaining enemies that block your path, you are done. However, if you make your way up to the helipad with the whole crew, you'll get a round 2 with Mr. Screw You. God damn, I need to work on my writing. I realise now that at the start of this video I made the mistake of thinking the Alpha Team's helicopter crashed and that's why they had no means of escape. It turns out that my memory has failed me slightly, and what happened here is this goddamn bloody pansy pilot, Brad Vickers, flew off in fear and abandoned the Alpha Team to their fate. It was only the Bravo Team helicopter that went down. Unfortunately, I had already recorded those sections before I realised my mistake, but it's my video, I can retcon whatever I want. So the Tyrant is back, spawning a shiny new stabby appendage, and it's really quite pissed off. You'll face him down against the clock on this large open helipad. He's a lot faster and a lot more persistent than he was down in that lab, but he's still not a huge challenge. Just keep dumping magnum and grenade rounds into him, and after enough damage, or time, Knobhead Brad, the pilot, will throw down a quad-barrel death machine, the famous and iconic Resident Evil rocket launcher. I did say the Colt Python is the strongest weapon in the game, and that's still mostly true, as you only get this destructive instrument of human technology at the final moments, not including bonus unlockables, but we'll get to that later. Just one missile will take down this bald baddie for good, and it's finally over. Safety is but a helicopter ride away as the entire mansion, guardhouse, lab, and all the surrounding grounds detonate with a viciousness that would please the most Michaelist of bays. There are a few endings for each character. You've got the worst ending, where you fail to save your imprisoned comrade, and also your companion throughout the game. You've got your okay/good ending, where you escape with just one, and of course there is the ultimate supreme omega ending, where everyone gets out alive. Not including everyone that died. Sorry Richard, Kenneth, Forrest.
Oh no.
Now it's incredibly unlikely that you get all the unlockables in one run, especially if it's your first go. But if you saved everyone and you got the best ending, you'll get a special key that gives you access to these fancy new costumes. Pretty legit for back in the day, and get this, they aren't even paid DLC. Cracking the super tough advanced difficulty with any character will afford you a Colt Python with unlimited ammunition, which feels so damn good to slaughter your way through the game with. The final unlock is the big beefy barrels of doom that is the rocket launcher. Beat the game on standard difficulty or above in under 3 hours, and it's yours. You'll know if you were successful if you see and hear a rocket shoot across the screen after the credits roll, just before your final time is displayed. What an awesome game. 3 memorable sprawling locations, I'm not counting the tunnels, they kinda suck. A roster of intimidating undead beasties to battle, and a scavenger hunt to stay alive through it all, encapsulated in a great soundtrack, the original soundtrack anyway. This really was the cream of the crop back in its heyday. In 2020 it does show some sand in its gears in terms of ergonomic use, but later titles quickly fixed nearly all of these problems. I'm mainly talking about the awkward reloading via the menu and things that feel like they just take too many button presses to get. Small complaints in the grand scheme of things. And there you have it, the original pioneer of survival horror, Resident Bloody Evil. Examined with unnecessary detail by a nerd with nothing better to do than revel in 90s nostalgia. I sort of feel like I've written a 10,000 word video walkthrough more than anything, but I've definitely had fun doing so, and if you're watching this far, you probably have a similar inclination. It's more likely you're one of my friends and family I've pestered to watch my excessively long-form content, but either way, thank you for sticking around. I appreciate it big time. Now there's a big chance that I missed something worth discussing in this video, so if you happen to be a bigger RE nerd than me, tell me what I missed in the comments and we'll have a chat about it. You can even do me a huge favour and smack that thumbs up button, and if you somehow got some semblance of enjoyment from my rambling, consider giving me a subscribe. If you're quite literally deranged and you wish to offer me some coffee money, my Patreon link is in the description. Obviously, that's entirely optional, I just love you watching my stuff. Now with that said, I've got a large coffee cup downstairs with my name on it. Bye for now.